Hello, everyone. My name is Trish McCabe, and welcome to Conversations from the School of Hard Knocks. This is a podcast where people from all walks of life will be sharing their stories and the wisdom they have gained from their life experiences. In no way is this show offering any kind of advice or counsel. These conversations will be of a very sensitive nature, so please be respectful in your comments, and thank you for watching. Hey everyone, welcome to Conversations from the School of Hard Knocks. My name is Trish. Today we are going to go over, basically we started a series on insecurities and where they come from. And today our segment is going to be on basically high school, the things we deal with in high school, particularly peer pressure, and how that affects us in our young adult life and then into our adult life as we make decisions based on these experiences. And that will, as we go in and we talk about these things, it'll be clear what we're discussing. As we did this before and it didn't get recorded. So, the last podcast I did with you, Opal, we used the movie The Breakfast Club to kind of illustrate the archetypes within the school cliques.
Yes.
Now, the next layer to that is peer pressure. And I've got Opal here to tell, her experience and Mike to tell his. So I think, Mike, I'll start with you. We talked about this before of, wanting to fit in and what comes with that and the whole peer pressure thing. And I think you had said that you had a couple of different things going. You had your neighborhood and then you had school. And so I'd like to hear about that and what the experience with peer pressure caused you to make these decisions and go in a certain direction in your life.
Right. I mean, I didn't have a need to fit in. Never really felt like I belonged anywhere. Not at home, not with my friends from my neighborhood that I went to school with. And I mean, that's probably the reason behind all the decisions, probably the reason behind starting out smoking cigarettes and getting high at I think I was 11 or 12 or something like that. It was the last day of sixth grade that I smoked weed. And we just kept pushing each other to see how far we could go. I mean, there was an element of in our neighborhood, there was a mafia element. And so guys who broke the law were looked up to. Kind of, so we wanted to see, or we broke as many laws as we could, and try to get away with as much as we could. And it was all based on fitting in. It was all based on a feeling of belonging, because God forbid, you didn't. I felt like if I didn't go along with them, that they would, not hang out with me. I couldn't have that. I didn't have that strength of saying, well, this is wrong, I'm not going to do this, although I knew it was wrong. I wanted to belong, so I did it, and justified it, found reasons to justify why we were doing some of the things that we were doing.
Yes, and that is such a big factor in this particular of the challenging part about that is we're so young. And we really don't know the ramifications of making these decisions, because not only we're emotionally not ready for a lot of these things. And then you start adding substances to the equation with your mind not fully developed, your brain not fully developed, and not just the mental and emotional effects, but the physiological effects of that decision. Like in my family, my siblings, we all started drinking and smoking, not myself particular, but at a very young age. And you just think, oh, it's no big deal. It's bad, like you said, but then you you just go, it's no, but you make light of it. But next thing you know, these things become coping mechanisms
Mm-hmm.
for your life, right?
Yeah.
So, and Opal, yours is a different. Okay, so we talked about this before. There's in peer pressure, there's the sex, there's the drugs, and then like the fitting in and bullying and
Hmm.
you know,
Yeah,
navigating all this. And for
I
you,
didn't do the drugs. I didn't do the alcohol. I was that kid that y'all are gonna go do that. I'm gonna be over here doing my own thing. But I left my sophomore year Virgin Mary, or my junior year Virgin Mary. That's what they used to call me. And then senior year, I was pregnant, and they I got ridiculed because I wasn't having sex. I got ridiculed because I wound up pregnant. It was kind of, I couldn't win. You know what I mean?
yeah.
And then I got made the example when we had the sex education classes. So that was even more fun.
Oh. Aw.
I mean,
Yeah. What, and these decisions, I mean, of course you're 17 and you get pregnant, and that's a life-changing thing. These are really life-changing things, these decisions that we make when we're so young and we have no idea what we're getting into. Um, and of course, and then you add hormones to the equation, right? You,
mhm.
of course, with you, Mike, you like want to belong, you want to get girls, liquid courage, drinking gave you, like you were talking about before, how you were in bands, you got into music very young and getting into clubs at a young age and being exposed to a lot more
Right.
than just what was going on in school.
I was really shy and kind of, felt so out of place at that young age, being in a club, in Manhattan. I'm from Middle Village, Queens. And I found after a beer or two that, it became easier to talk, became easier to be a part of. Um, and the more I drank, the more obnoxious that I got, which was, I mean, at first it was kind of people like, they wouldn't pressure me, but it was like expected. People like that version of me. So I felt that that's what I needed to do to be that version of me, not realizing in any way, shape, or form that I had, um, whether it was like genetic predisposition or just all the right factors to become an addict, because I did right away. You know what I mean?
Yes.
I was not the guy who, could drink two beers and get a little liquid courage and leave it at that. I went way overboard. I would just continue on. And it was like this double-edged sword, because I needed it to give me the courage to be a part of certain things. But then it led me to do other things that I wasn't proud of and I wasn't happy with, you know what I mean?
Yes.
But I didn't feel like I couldn't stop, I mean, and stopping never even occurred to me. It wasn't even something that I wanted to do. I just wish I could have figured it out at that age.
Yeah, because you're like, like my brother, he was 11 years old when he started drinking, and you don't realize that not only are you doing something to fit in and to be with the cool kids and everything else, cigarettes, we talked about, is one of the other things that comes out of that. And you don't realize that you're actually developing coping mechanisms
Mhm.
with your anxiety, with whatever feelings, like feelings of inferiority or insecurity. And so, you have that liquid courage and you don't think anything of it. You're like, oh, I feel great. And you're this bubbly light, and people respond to that positively. So like, oh, this is working. And next thing you know, that's what you use to function.
Mhm.
It right. It becomes part of survival even.
Pretty much.
And also too, like if you're with whatever emotions come up and you don't want to deal with them, you'll have a cigarette, or you'll, go find a boy to flirt with, and or drink. I mean, all of these things become ways to just deal with your feelings of anxiety and wanting to belong. And everything that comes with being young, and then you add hormones to the equation. You know, and that's even harder because you're having all these normal physiological attractions to the opposite sex, and then you add, you know, everything else to it, and it pushes you even more to get involved in these things before your time, I guess.
Yeah,
um
I mean, my self-esteem came from that. I mean,
yeah.
I didn't really have very much self-esteem. I can't say like I was a real bad victim of bullying, but I was bullied because I was much smaller than everybody. So if somebody
Me
needed to feel
too.
better about themselves, they would, you know, they would pick on me. You know what I mean? And but when I got a little loaded, I mean, I'd get a loud mouth, and sometimes that would scare people off. I don't know why. I was like tiny. I only weighed 100 pounds or something like that. But and then, you know, I mean, drinking gave me the courage to talk to girls in clubs, and you know, having girls older than me make out with me or further than that or whatever, you know, that's where my self-esteem came from. Always use stuff like that to prove who I was, you know, to prove that I was like this really cool dude, this rock star dude, or whatever it was, you know, because I was having sex at 15 and 16 with 18-year-old girls, and I was going to bars. And you know what was weird was that, like, I didn't fit in with the crowd in my neighborhood. Like those kids, I hung out with the cool kids, but I was like the lowest on the totem pole of the cool kids. And I didn't get and I kept it secret that I was doing, you know, like people know I was a musician, and they knew I was playing with this band, but they didn't know that, you know, I was sneaking out of my house at 10 o'clock at night to go to a gig at CBGB's, and sneaking back in at 3 o'clock in the morning. And I kind of kept that for a while from everybody because I was afraid of my parents finding out, which they eventually did, of course. But yeah, I mean,
Yeah, so you kind of had like a double life going too. You
well,
had this over, you know, the school thing, and then you had, I mean, I did that too. I was into music, so I dated guys older than me because I was getting into bars, you know, because the bouncers would let you in if you looked pretty and you did yourself up enough, and so I could kind of relate to that with, especially with the music thing, for sure. Um, and it's dangerous. It's very dangerous thing, especially for girls too, and that
Yeah.
kind of ties in with you, like if you don't feel like you fit in and you meet this boy you really like, and you've just got all this
Oh,
hormones and everything
oh
going
yeah, the
on.
phrase young, dumb, and stupid comes to mind. I mean, because I can't tell you how many girls that I know that were, you know, young teen moms, and they were like, oh yeah, young, dumb, and stupid. He pulled the wool right over my eyes. And that's generally
Mm,
the way it happens. It's just because we're not confident enough and self-aware enough to make those good decisions. We run with our hormones, not our brains.
and then you got everything else. Yes.
Yeah.
Mike, you were
And
gonna sorry.
go ahead.
so like, um, you know, from your lower income neighborhoods, your ethnic neighborhoods, a lot of that happens with younger girls because they find that as a way out. You know, I mean,
Hmm.
they come from pure poverty and no way out, and they see the drug dealer with the money and the nice cars, you know, and first of all, it's a build of self-esteem, and second of all, it's a chance of getting their way out, and rarely ever ends up as a way out. It usually ends up as a mother without a dad to raise this baby, and nobody's paying child support. And I mean, a lot of these girls have kids to 2 or 3 different guys by the time they're 20, you know.
Yeah.
Oh no,
And
I
that
completely
sorry.
agree. I was
Yes.
just going to say I completely agree because I mean, here I am 33 years old, mine's fixing to be 16 years old, and I haven't been able to really be on my own because they don't make society doesn't make it easy for a single mom.
Yeah,
Then there's that.
I seen some stuff today that really kind of chapped my hide a little bit about, you know, welfare is just wrong. You know, I mean, any kind of cash or food assistance or medical assistance is just wrong. You should go out and earn it. And people never give mind to a lot of, single mothers and young girls with children of what went behind getting them there. It's like, oh, well, she made a decision to screw around with some drug dealer or some guy and got what she had coming to her. So she should be forced to live in that crap neighborhood and not be able to go to work because she can't afford childcare and not get any assistance from her state or her city. She got what she deserved.
I love that you brought that up.
And it's so terrible, it really is terrible because, it's not a handout. And really, the amount of money that they give somebody is next to nothing. And the amount of money that you have to make to qualify for that, or the lack of amount of money that you have to make to qualify for that. They're not getting enough to live on. They're barely, surviving, and people are complaining about them, saying my tax dollars go on this. And so a lot of education comes in here because I learned a lot about this in school for social work. Such a minimal amount of our tax dollars goes towards welfare, and cash and food assistance for others. Most of our tax dollars go for defense funds. But people, if you really add up like the 20 cents a week that comes out of your paycheck that goes to feeding poor people, you'd be like, well, maybe they should take more, if they knew it. You know what I mean?
Exactly. Oh, don't even get me started on that. We could do a whole podcast on that, by the way. I have a lot to say on that subject.
I was just going to say on the other end of the spectrum, you have the single moms who don't make enough money to be on their own, but make too much money to get any kind of assistance.
Right.
Because that's the situation I'm in.
You can't win.
$10 an hour and you have a kid, you're not getting cash assistance.
Yeah.
You're not getting food stamps. You're not going to get it. They expect you to live on $10 an hour, and they just had it on the news. $10 an hour, you cannot afford to live anywhere. You can't afford a 2-bedroom apartment anywhere in the country on $10.
It's not a living wage.
No, not at all.
I'm making more than $10 an hour, but I'm not making enough because you have clothes for the kid. You have, when they hit 16, you have car insurance that you have to start paying for, and you have medical insurance that you have to pay for, and then you have rent, and you have phone bill, and just the bare necessities. You would have to make $20 an hour just to live. And that plays a big factor into self-esteem.
Right.
And that's why this is so powerful, you guys. I just appreciate you so much. There are no words, because people want to know how we got here. People want to know why things are such a mess. Well, I saw a meme last week that said, if you want to know what the future looks like, take a look at what you're doing right now. But we're not taught that. We're not taught that as young people. We need to be teaching life skills to young people. And I saw a wonderful, I think I've even talked with both of you guys. I saw this wonderful video of this woman teaching her 3-year-old child how to manage his emotions. Instead of judging them and making them bad and wrong, she helped him count to 10. She talked him through his feelings, validated his feelings, so that he doesn't have to resort to drinking or having sex or all these ways of dealing with these emotions we're not allowed to express. Because it's just kind of that stiff upper lip thing that we've been taught in society that has helped to perpetuate these scenarios that we're in of, that never let them see you sweat, act cool. I think of Fonzie. I was watching the Happy Days a couple days ago, and you gotta be cool. He was cool, and just that whole, be cool thing. And these scenarios that come out of that create problems in our society, to just say something like, oh, our tax paying dollars, this, that, and the other. It's just not that simple.
No, it's not. It's just so hard to see like what's happened to this country with people. It's just this big, huge split, and that conservative viewpoint of life was better 50 years ago when women were in the kitchen and you know, black people were in their neighborhoods and didn't come out, you know, that was when America was great, you know, when white people's lives were improving and black people stayed where they were and women were not working and in the kitchen cooking, you know, and man, we've come so far away from that, and people are fighting so hard to get back to it. And it's like so much has been added to this world because of the diversity, you know.
Absolutely.
Which is you know, a tremendous blessing. So, you know, people don't want change, but I mean, it's inevitable. America is a melting pot.
And
Change is the only constant.
we're changing, you know, we are changing, and it's for the better, you know. I mean, it is
Yes.
for the better. If I mean, well, we'll never, I don't know if we'll ever get there, but I mean, if black people or brown people are allowed, not, I wouldn't say allowed, but are afforded the opportunity to be as good as they are in society and contribute what they have to contribute to society, this would be a much better place, you know. They said the same things about Irish and Italian people in the early 1900s, and you know, now the country's run by Irish and Italian and whatever. It just, you know,
The thing is, these are the working class, you know, are the very people that have saved us in this pandemic. That they don't deserve $14 an hour, which isn't even a living wage. That's insulting. You're talking about human beings here, you know. So, but all of these things, they start with what we're talking about. They start with these things we learn in our families, and then we go to school and learn these behaviors of fitting in and making, and that leads young people to make bad decisions that greatly affect not only their own lives but society.
Wealthy families who come from affluent neighborhoods, they all have the same things. I mean, they all have to do the things according to the people they're growing up with to fit in. You know, like a rich, not rich or whatever, well-off person were to date a not well-off person, they would get looked down on by their peers, you know. And
The movie Pretty in Pink comes to mind with that one.
yeah.
I'm sorry, I
Romeo
didn't
and
mean to
Juliet.
interrupt, but yeah, that too. Well, that was more of a, they were both upper class. They were just feuding families, but
they weren't
still
allowed to be with
they weren't
who
allowed
they
to partake
chose to
with
be
each other.
with. Your cultures and your family structures and all that, you know, doesn't allow, well, for freedom, personal freedom. You know, it's kind of the pigeonholing thing and the fitting in thing, and this is what you are and that's what you are, you know. And again, I'll go back to the reason why this is such a powerful podcast in particular is because if people, we see so many people with what's going on, how did we get here? Right here.
That's it.
With what we're talking about, because everything comes down to decisions we make. And you know, I saw a really great meme that said something like, you're not running from your demons, you're running from the decisions and the consequences of those decisions. But we're not taught those things, you know. We're too busy trying to please everyone and to our own detriment, and leads us to do things we normally probably wouldn't even do. So yeah, and then of course peer pressure, there's still kind of some of it going on once you get older. You know, there's still these constructs that you're supposed to fit in, you know, like what a mother's role is, what a father's role is, and things like that, if that makes any sense. But yeah, so
I mean, it's weird. Like, I know some really, really strong people, and they were taught at a very, very young age that they're just perfect. You know, no matter what they do, they're perfect. No matter how many mistakes they make, or whether they can read well or write well. They're perfect, you know. And they just came from these families where the family was invested in the family. They didn't invest in outside things. They didn't invest in uh, material things. They invested in the family and built the family from within. And these people are very strong people, and won't go against their morals, you know. Whereas, you know, the way I was brought up, man, I was just told I was bad. I was told I was, everything I did was wrong. You know, I mean, getting upset over things as a kid because my brother wouldn't play with me or something was wrong. I should have been stronger. I shouldn't have smoked cigarettes. I shouldn't have taken drugs. You know, that kind of stuff is terrible. It made me a bad person. And then, you know, the drugs made me do things that are bad. You know, I did steal from my family, from people I didn't know, whatever, which added more to the insecurities and the low self-esteem, because I started feeling like I was the piece of shit that everybody said I was. Although people weren't calling me a piece of shit, they were just, I mean, my parents were not bad people. They just didn't know any better. So they said things that they thought would help me improve, but I seen it and took it in a way that made me feel like I was less than.
Yeah, the constantly, you know, don't do this, don't do that. And so, and then it's like you're already struggling. So then you get a little bit rebellious too. There's a little bit of rebellion in there. And then people wonder why children act up, right? I mean, it's tough. I mean, what are your thoughts on this, Opal, as far as?
I really kind of agree with both of you because I mean, I'm kind of seeing now the mistakes that I made with the kiddo because I was a baby having a baby. I didn't know any better. And
Yeah.
I made a lot of mistakes by her. They weren't intentional, but I'm having to try to correct those choices that I didn't know another way to make. I'm trying to correct them now, and it's rough. So, I mean, I totally agree with Mike. I mean, if I had gone into it, you know, from jump without any judgments, but I had judgments about myself. So how was I not going to have judgments about anybody else? You know, that if I
Yeah.
had told her that, you know, no matter what she does, she was perfect and worked with her like the girl that you were talking about earlier, how to deal with her emotions and his emotions and all that kind of stuff. If I had done all that, you know, things probably would be different. But, you know, you don't know something until you know something, you know?
That wasn't given to you.
That's
How
what I'm
can we
saying.
give something to our children that was not given to us? And people, they say, well, you're a bad parent or whatever. It's like, no, a misinformed parent,
Yeah.
a misguided person. That how can you know you have a choice if it was never made available to us? You were never made aware of it. And especially
Yeah.
when in your environment, that's what everyone else is doing. You know, like our parents,
Yeah.
Mike particularly, or and your mom too, you know, that's what you did when you got out of school. You got married and you had kids. That was the norm. That was kind of like a peer pressure type of thing. Here's what you do. I mean, that whole idea when you're 18, you're out of the house too, which is needs some revisions. Um, but all of these things we're talking about has perpetuated the things and the problems that we're having to deal with today. And they're only going to get worse if we don't really sit down and get to the root of these issues. So the meeting's going to end in 10 minutes. So, anyways, let me just get this thing out of here. I'm just very thankful to you guys for coming and talking about this. And I wish we had more time, but Zoom is kind of restructured things here. So it would just create a lot of waiting around and all that. And you guys have already taken so much time to talk about these issues. And I'm very, very grateful. And this is when I think it's going to be really great. If people watch this, it's going to want to make them go back and watch the previous podcasts that we've done together. You and I, Mike, you and I, Opal. about these issues and really just basically insecurities and where they come from, and that it really is the root of so many problems in society of, I think I want to say one thing, before we close this up. What you said about perfection is powerful, Mike. I think that's across the board. This idea that there is such a thing of being perfect. And then, of course, you've got to think about a wealthy person and the Breakfast Club and the popular girl, and you have to maintain a certain aura or whatever, which isn't reality. It's not real. You're having to pretend to be something that you're not either way. So I love that you said that. You brought that up.
Perfection is what needs to change. I mean, there should be no perception of perfection. I mean, not that I'm a religious person, but I mean, I don't believe that we came from a big bang. I mean, I believe we were made, that there's a power greater than ourselves at work here, and he created us as perfect. Our vision of perfect is what's changing. I mean, the earliest people, if you read back in the Bible, I mean, they all made terrible mistakes. I mean, it's always an evolution. But if we could accept that and rather than punish, teach, you know what I mean? Rather than admonish,
condemnation,
rather than condemn, educate, and be there, we can make, people will need less to fit in, and will continue to grow personally based on being accepted. I mean, a person who feels accepted, a person who feels like they belong, won't need to bow to peer pressure, or even if there isn't peer pressure, just because everybody's doing something and nobody's pressuring them to do it, they still feel the need to do it. You wouldn't do that. You wouldn't have to.
Because you're human, and that's, the making the mistake is as important as anything else in life. You can't learn and grow if you're not allowed to be human and make a mistake. So I love that you brought that up. And on a closing note here, Opal, do you have anything you want to say on that closing out here?
Perfectly imperfect just pretty much sums it up. And it totally goes along with what Mike was saying. Our perception of perfect it leaves no room for flaws. And that's got to change.
Right.
And I love that. And again, thank you guys so much for joining me. Michael, Opal, I didn't introduce you guys in the beginning because this whole 40-minute factor, but I think we did this, and I just appreciate your time so much. And I'm already getting feedback on these previous podcasts. More and more people are starting to watch it, and they're like, this is really great stuff. So I'm very excited to see how people respond to what we're talking about here. Thank you so much. I can't say enough for working with me. I appreciate it.
See you guys.
All right, you guys have a great evening. All righty.
Y'all have a good night. Bye.